That makes it excludable. And then he talks about rival, and rival is anytime, say, someone else uses the product and it detracts from your enjoyment. All right. So rival would be anytime someone's using the product and the other person's use detracts from your enjoyment of the product or service. And then he talks about the four types of goods. Okay. And I would expect a couple of questions on these. So private goods are excludable and rival. And like one of their favorite examples of private goods are ice cream cones. So it's excludable, meaning there's a price for them, and they're rival because if someone bites into my cone, I'll probably enjoy it less. The second is a club good. A club good, and I think he also calls it a natural monopoly. He might call them both there. They're excludable and non-rival. Think cable TV. It's excludable because there's a price. It's non-rival because someone's using cable, someone's use of cable does not prevent my enjoyment of cable. And then you have the common resource, which is rival and not excludable. You can think like of fishing. It's not excludable because anyone could fish, but it's rival because if you take all the fish out of the pond, fishing isn't as enjoyable. And then you have the public good, which is non-rival and non-excludable. And you could think public schools, public parks. So you have private goods, club goods, common resource, and public goods. I'd say all are equally going to be tested on the quiz. I'd say usually on like the AP test or the unit test, you're going to see more questions on public goods. All right, a free rider is a person who receives a benefit without paying for it. A person who receives a benefit without paying for it. You could think of group work as free riders. You could think of people hopping the train style as free riders, people watching fireworks from afar and not putting any money in as free riders. All right, where I put like, if you have the outline, national defense, basic research, those are just example of public goods. All right, a lighthouse is public goods. I mean, a lighthouse is neither excludable. I mean, it's non-excludable and non-rival. So it is a public good. If a boat's going and they see the lighthouse, which is protecting them from seeing the shore, all the boats could do it. And if some boat's using it, it doesn't affect how the other one does. Now, where it could be, where it could become excludable and non-rival, like a club good would be if a port charged boats for the use, or if a port charges for the use of the light, and that's very uncommon. And if the port doesn't get paid, they just shut off the light. But that's very uncommon. I would think of a lighthouse as a public good. All right, the cost benefit analysis. I'd remember one, it's hard to measure benefits. Right. Two, you want to measure so if there's 100 people, you want to measure the benefit and everyone's willing to put in $10, that'd be $1,000. It's the benefit of the total of those 100 people. All right. And you got to go for what they're willing to pay. Now, in the cost benefit analysis, what tends to happen is the people who want a school will exaggerate the benefits that school will be for the community. And the people who don't want the school will exaggerate like the negatives. So sometimes that has a lot of problems. All right, if you flip over to the tragedy of the commons, which is something I didn't really talk about in class, that was The tragedy of the commons is common resources are used more than desired. And that because no one owns them, like people take advantage of them. If you think of a public bathroom, like, I mean, people don't clean it or take care of it. You think of like when people litter. Uh, so those are like examples of tragedy of the commons, or where the resource is overused, and that could be like in the fishing where you know everyone's fishing and like all of a sudden there's a shortage of fish. All right, and he then talks about why the cow is not extinct, and because cows are privately owned. So they're not overused and they're taken care of because they're valued and they're privately owned. All right. And he then had the important common resources, clean air, congested roads, fish and whales. All right. And that's pretty much the chapter. I would ask if anyone has any questions on anything or the practice quiz. Just put it in the chat and I'd be glad to answer them. I want to get at least this one question. I got to find it. Here we go. All right. I'll start with this question 6. And then if anyone else has anything. All right, so there's 3 family. All right. So suppose the cost to install the street light is $300 and the families have agreed to split the cost. All right, so the families have agreed to split the cost. That means each family is willing to pay $100, right? 300 divided by 3. To maximize their own surplus, how many streetlights would, how many streetlights would the Harris family like to install? So we're just talking about the Harris family here. So here's the Harris family. For one streetlight, they're willing to pay $250. They're gonna have to pay $100. We're gonna install the first streetlight. For the second streetlight, they're willing to pay $200. You have to pay $100. That's that one. For the third streetlight, they're willing to pay $140 and they have to pay $100. They're going to do 3. For the fourth one, they're willing to pay $70. They have to pay $100. They're going to stop there at that third street light, and the answer there would be D as in Dogwood. All right. Now, here's the type of questions that I think you also got to be careful about here. All right. Obviously, they could ask you any of the family's names, right? Sometimes they'll ask you, how about if they vote in a majority? So then you need 2 of the, like, say for that 100. So then for the first one, all 3 would vote yes. For the second one, all 3 would vote yes. For the third one, 2 of 3, because Jones, it's 90. They're not going to vote yes. They're only willing to spend 90. And for the fourth one, only 1 of 3. So the majority would be, 3 streetlights too. So that would sometimes be. And then they might ask you like the total surplus. So you'd add these 3 up, and if it's more than 300, they're going to buy a light. So those are the type of questions they're going to ask. And by the way, the Jones family, the Harris family, the Wong family, this graph is going to be on it. They just might pick a different family, or they might have them voting, or they, like I said, it might be the total surplus, but this chart's going to be on it. Okay. Any other questions anyone has? Again, just put them in the chat and I'll be glad to answer anything you have. 11. Is 11 the other one? Yeah, it is. Okay, great. That's a great one. Okay. So suppose the park costs $14 an acre and the residents agreed to split the cost. All right. So it's 14 divided by 3. And I think that's 4 2/3. Like, is that right? That's 6/3. That's yeah. So it's 4 2/3. Okay. So each person is paying, 4 2/3 dollars per acre. All right. If the okay, here's one. Like I said, they vote to determine, basing solely on their willingness to pay. All right. So now, if they're voting in a majority, you need 2 out of 3 to vote yes. All right. So it's costing $4.67, right? That's 4 2/3. Ed's willing to pay because he's willing to spend 12. Jim's willing to spend 16, and Tony's willing to spend 28. For the second one, Ed's willing to spend 8. He'll do one. Jim will do 12 is great. Tony will do. For the third one, Ed is not. He's only willing to spend 4, and it's going to cost $4.67. Jim is willing, and Tony is. So we're going to get the third because 2 of the 3 are voting. Yes. The fourth one, Ed's voting no, right? Because he's only willing to spend 2, and they want him to spend $4.67. Jim's going to vote. So they're not going to vote for the fourth one because there's 2 no's. So they're going to stop at 3 lights. Okay. Ross, did that make sense to you? Or 3 acres, not 3 lights.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Now, again, on this one, they could ask you for Jim or Tony, like how many they would want to do. And they could change it from 14 acres to 30 an acre. And then, like, again, let me just see how this would be. How if they said total surplus? So that'd be 28.56. That's more than 14. So they take the first acre. That's 20.44. That's more than 14. That would take the second. 12.32. That's more than 14. They do the third. 6.22. That's more. They do the fourth. But then they'd stop at 4 if they did it that way. Okay. Any other questions that anyone has? This might be like the shortest review of all time. No one else with the question? Okay, I will, be in my room tomorrow morning if anyone has any questions. We'll also have some time because it's in the classroom. So we'll have some time if you have questions before. Oh, how is Toll Boost getting rid of strategy? Is that can you go over? Yeah, I'll go over 5. Evan, is the toll booths a question on the practice quiz or just a question you have?
Practice quiz number 9.
Okay. When is the quiz again? Tomorrow. Okay, let me look at 9 and then I'll look at 5. All right, let's see. Can I get this? All right, 9. So government intervention to solve a tragedy of the country. Oh, so Evan, I think what they're saying there is you had congested roads, so you have cars overusing the resource. So then you put toll booths on them, and now because you have toll booths, less cars are using the resource, therefore there's less traffic.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right, now let's look at 5. Suppose the town upon is consider bringing the additional, right, the direction price estimate to $10 for each. All right. So if each person is willing to pay $10, if I take 4,500 and times it by 10, that would give me 45,000. So the town is willing to pay 45,000 for a police officer. So they'll hire police officers at the cost of, if the officer's cost is less than 45,000. Kevin, did that make sense to you?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, if no one else has any questions, I will see you tomorrow and have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.